We good?
What were you saying over there?
Nothing.
All right.
Saying very nice things about my producer.
Oh, I doubt it.
Let's go to the hotline and bring in the voice of the Texas Longhorns. He called Cameron Dicker's game-winning field goal on Saturday night. But you probably even more know him as the Texas High School Ball Hall of Famer, my co-host on High School Scoreboard Live on Friday nights on Fox Sports Southwest. It is Craig Way, who you've now called from the high school ranks to the college ranks. You've called your fair number of buzzer beaters, it seems like, in recent years.
That's worked out pretty well. You don't ever exactly plan for those things, and the one thing I learned over time, Tep, is if you make a plan on how you want to call something, it will go disastrously wrong and bad. So your best bet is just let it ride, call it as best you can, and let the moment just kind of, roll up on you, and then you just respond. You just react and respond. So that seems to have worked out okay.
Craig, you don't got to tell me not to prepare. I'm excellent.
This guy is never prepared.
I'm well on my way there. I want to spring something on you, and I hope I'm not catching you by surprise. But I just got an email that the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame, of which you are a member, just announced its 2020 class. I know you and
okay.
I believe you, and as a member, you've been a long-time voter too. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you and I are both voters for the Texas High School Ball Hall of Fame. They announced their class. 1950s and before, Charlie Taylor from Grand Prairie Dalworth. 1960s, Chuck Dykes from Garland. 1970s, Eric Dickerson from Sealy. 1980s, Tyrone Thurman from Midland Lee. 1990s, David Warren from John Tyler. 2000s, Danny Amendola from the Woodlands. 2 members of the Eddie Joseph coach category, Chad Morris from Bay City and Lake Travis, and Dan Hooks from West Orange Stark. And the Dave Campbell Contributor to the Game Award, which is how you're in the Hall of Fame, goes to Joe Martin of the Texas High School Coaches Association, the TXHSFB. I think I'm breaking some news to you, so I guess I want to just get your overall instant reaction to that.
Not surprised by any one total there or result. I kind of figured that it would go that way just about across the board. It pretty closely matched my ballot, pretty closely. But absolutely not one single result out of that surprised me. And all very well-deserving guys, too. There's no question about it. I put it this way. I don't think any of us we're going to be surprised to see Eric Dickerson get in the Hall of Fame. So no surprises out of that at all, and all of them very, very deserving.
Absolutely, it's if you're interested, the Hall of Fame induction ceremony is going down on May 2nd down there in Waco. Okay, so on to Texas high school football, the week that was in Texas high school football, and I guess what I'll do is I think that sometimes you get this opportunity that there's a nice handle on everything that you can grab onto and take it at face value based on what you see from this group of games. Last week we had 6 matchups of undefeateds across the state. And I'll run them down, and I want to know which one of these, which result of these stands out to you. Was it Decatur's win over Springtown? Was it Frisco Lone Star's win over the Colony? Was it Shiner's win over Weimar? A&M Consolidated's win over Katy Pato? Wall's win over Jim Ned? Or was it Shadow Creek's win over Friendswood? Which of those, you feel free to wax poetic on any of them, but which of those particularly caught your eye?
Well, none of the victors, the teams that won it, surprised me. I was a little surprised by the lopsided nature of Consol's win over Pato, but the one that really just kind of leaped off the page was Shiner and an absolute domination in their win. I think that, and I know that kind of raised an eyebrow with you as well. That was incredibly impressive because. And I think you made a good point of this when you and I were talking yesterday, that we kind of almost take Shiner for granted a little bit or overlook them a little bit because we're looking at some of the other teams and saying, hey, this team looks really good and this team looks really good. But they're to be taken for real as a legitimate, serious contender in 2A Division I for a state title.
They are cruising along right now, and certainly look no worse than co-favorites to come out of Region 4 in 2A Division 1. So now we enter Week 9 of the Texas high school football season, and while I think it doesn't necessarily have it doesn't have the same number of matchups of undefeated, so it doesn't have that easy kind of node to grab onto. What it does have is a number of games where it feels like you have an opportunity for teams to really step up and take ownership of districts, perhaps in surprising ways. One of them is, of course, because we can't go a week without talking about our favorite district, it's 13-5A Division 2. Pflugerville-Weiss and Georgetown-Eastview. And it strikes me, and maybe it's just because I live up here in the DFW Metroplex and you're down there in the Austin area, I feel like people around the state are not necessarily realizing what a remarkable season and journey it's been so far for Pflugerville-Weiss, which now could if they get a win this Thursday night against Eastview, could put them at worst in the driver's seat for the district title.
Yeah, that district, and really, like you say, it's one of the more fascinating districts. And I would add to it this: that the story last year was Leander Glenn. Mm-hmm. Now they were both first-year varsity programs, but the way that I look at it, it's almost in how we saw, and stay with me on this a little bit, how the Florida Marlins and say, I don't know, the Anaheim Angels back in the early 2000s approached going about winning World Series in different fashion. And maybe this is apropos since the World Series begins tonight. But the Angels at the time, just Anaheim Angels before they added the Los Angeles thing, built through the farm system. The Marlins had the quick ramp up to try to win a World Series with the signing of free agents. Diamondbacks did it also in 2001. Where I'm going with this is these two programs, Glenn and Weiss, went about becoming contenders in different ways in their first 2 seasons of varsity program. Glenn ramped up and had a senior class. So they became instant contenders, and lo and behold, the Grizzlies wind up sharing a district title in their first season of varsity competition. Now, there are people going, yeah, well, Shadow Creek got all the way to state championship, and that's true. Mm-hmm. And of course they benefited obviously from that treasure trove of talent down there in the Manville area, clearly. So they were building from scratch really at Glenn, and they were pulling from Leander High, a little bit from Rouse to get it, but they had a senior class, and Rob Shainfeld, who'd been on that state championship staff of Carl Apsix at Cedar Park prior to, knew how to build, and he had a senior class. So they succeeded. Weiss could have waited until the next realignment to come around because they weren't going to have a senior class. But Tommy Altman and his crew said, no, we're going to go ahead, take our lumps, build toward our senior class. Well, they took their lumps. They went 0-10 a year ago without a senior class. It was to be expected. So now with a senior class, they're reaping the benefits not only of having seniors, but guys who were in there and were taking their lumps last year. Now, to be certain, they pulled a surprise or two along the way in the playoffs. I mean, in the regular season, headed toward the playoffs. But they built for this moment. And that's why it's a really cool story with what they've done. And you're right. They went and put it this way. If they win this game against Eastview, which will not be easy, Eastview dropped a close game to Glenn last week. But if they do win it, it does set up the showdown on the final Friday night of the regular season between Weiss and Brenham for the district title. So it's a fascinating story of 2 programs, each of whom have gone about it in different ways. And in Glenn's case, hey, they didn't suffer for it either. They win on Friday night against Marble Falls, and they'll make it back-to-back trips to the playoffs in their first 2 years as a varsity program. So that's a great story as well. So it's just an interesting contrast and how these teams have built to the point where they're now both contending for playoff spots and, in Weiss's case, a district title.
It's Craig Way, the Texas High School Football Hall of Famer, joins us every Tuesday here on Texas Football Today. Get involved in the conversation, hashtag TF Today. All right, Craig, there is another there's an off-the-field happening going on Friday that I think is an appropriate measure of high school football nerddom, which is it's Snapshot Day. It's UIL Snapshot Day. For those who don't know, that's when the schools around the state have to turn in their enrollment numbers to the UIL, and that is in many ways the beginning of the realignment process. And if you want to even extrapolate it further, it's kind of the first day of the 2020 football season. If you really want to get into it like that. So I feel like. So, for example, I feel like there's different levels of nerddom, right? There's the
you
level,
are at the highest of which.
Well, no, I would disagree with you because I would say that Matt Stepp is at the highest.
That's
of this
fair. You might be one
because
step
Matt
down.
Stepp is the one who's going to be gathering all these numbers and poring over them and stuff like that. There's a sub level of nerddom that I feel like I occupy, where it is like I'm interested in this. But I want to see the top line. I want somebody to kind of tell me. I want to pay attention to it, but there's that. And then there's normal people who don't pay attention to it at all and say, "Wake me up in February." Where on that scale of nerdery do you fall on a day like Snapshot Day?
Oh, I'm on the nerd spectrum. I don't think there's any doubt about that. There's no question about it. Here's to the level I'm at. First of all, I understand Stepp still. And by the way, did you have to talk Stepp into coming down for that Eastview Weiss game, or was that just on his own decided that was the best Thursday night contest to be at?
He is going to be down there at the Eastview Weiss game. He's very excited about it. He's doing it not only because it's a really good game, but also because he has to show up Danny Davis, the Austin American statesman who claims he never comes to Austin. That's why.
That's true. They have some weird little. They have an odd relationship with two of those guys. But to your point. I'm really into the snapshot thing as well. To the nerd level, that it would be really cool to actually be there at the time that the actual snapshot of a given school is taken, and to see the reaction of the coaches or the athletic directors involved with that. And this is where you and I come in, Step. I mean, or not Tep, not Step, but Step could be included in this as well. This is where you and I come in. You know, a lot of those snapshots, the way they do that. We've seen it, I don't know, I'll give you a random number, 2988.5. I think you, me, and Step are all the .5s involved there with that. If we would be the .5s, if I had attended high school in the state of Texas, I'd have been a .5. I sincerely believe you were a .5 when you were at Coppell. So, you know, there's some... all of that minutia that goes into that, and I think you've probably seen it. I know I have. The .5, and somebody says, "How can you be .5 of a student?" You know, there's a famous episode of the Andy Griffith Show where Andy's trying to teach Opie about underprivileged children, and he talks about a ratio of 3.1 to 1 or something. He says, "Boy, what a unfortunate kid." He goes, "What kid?" Horatio, not Horatio, a ratio of a half a boy. He goes, "You need to just forget about that." He goes, "I will, Paul, but it's pretty hard to forget a half a boy." So, you know, the point of the deal is that, you know, we've seen this .5 come through with the difference of Division I or Division II, and really to the point of, do we go any further than Cy-Fair? You know, by one full student, they become Division II and win a state championship, going in the Division II bracket a couple years back. So it's a big thing. It's an important thing. Now, how goofy and nerdy you want to get about it is up to you individually. We choose to tip the spectrum that way. I don't think there's any question about that.
He's the Texas High School Football Hall of Famer and a proud nerd, Craig Way. Listen to his fine work on the horn in Austin, and of course, hear him on the Texas radio call on Saturday up in Fort Worth. But you can also find him on Fox Sports Southwest as the co-host of High School Scoreboard live at 11 o'clock. Craig, appreciate your time, my friend, and I will see you on Friday night.
The highest levels of nerddom will come in 2 weeks when you and I and Steph are breaking down point differentials, tiebreakers, and coin flips of the likes I've seen in the past and others. That's where it really gets interesting.
I will prepare myself for that.
It's a wonderful time of year. Thanks, Craig.
Get ready. It's coming.
Thanks, Craig.
There he goes. Craig Way, the Texas High School Football Hall of Famer, joins us every Tuesday here on Texas Football Today.